Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have with a review of the finale episode of Wandavision, the much anticipated conclusion to the first Disney Plus show within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now this review will contain spoilers, so you've been warned now. If you haven't yet caught up with all the previous episodes, or you haven't indeed watched the finale episode, I advise you to go away, catch up with the episode and then come back to this review. So to recap overall, we pick up from last week's episode where we essentially saw the backstory of Wanda's memories and how she came to actually create the Hex Zone that we've seen throughout the entire series, containing the various sitcom realities. And of course, Agatha revealed her true intentions, and we also got a quick insight into her origins, how she was essentially tried to be killed because she involved this chaos magic, and how she now deems the inhabitant of the chaos magic to be Wanda and has now named her to be the Scarlet Witch. That's really where we left off with the previous episode. Now overall, in terms of this finale, I think it was a spectacular, action-packed, exciting, and I think overall a sound conclusion to this series. I know there's been a lot of online speculation and debate because we've seen over the past, really since this show began, so many fans' theories and ideas of where they think this show was heading. Would it be the integration of the mutants and the X-Men? Would we see Mephisto? Would we see Nightmare? Would we see Doctor Strange? There's been all of this debate and speculation going on. So I think if you are looking at this as an individual finale episode, which I always feel should be the biggest of any series, then I think it was very satisfactory. But if you are more into all of the fan speculation and overall where the MCU is heading going forward, and you wanted to see much more of a monumental push in a certain direction, because we all know we're going to get the multiverse as well going in with the MCU, then you may feel disappointed. But that's another debate as opposed to fan theories and actually what goes on in terms of the actual content. But in terms of the actual show, I can't really have too many complaints. I think it did what it was meant to do. It gave us all of the particular action beats and certainly a lot of the comic book adventure that we would normally associate with the MCU. And maybe it felt at times almost like it was a completely different show as to what we saw within the first episode. But overall, I really liked it. So if we go over quickly what happened within this particular episode, we started off, of course, with Wanda battling Agatha within the street environment. Of course, Agatha had kept her two sons hostage. We see the emergence, of course, of Wandavision, what we saw of the end credits of the previous episode, which was constructed by General Hayward. And he comes and grabs Wanda because obviously he's under the control of Hayward. And then the real Vision, or the other Vision, if you like, the one that was created by Wanda, intervenes, and they join forces to fight against both Agatha and the White Vision. And we get some really cool fight sequences and flight sequences where we see both Visions fighting together in the sky, and they're transmitting both their energy beams together. And this is the really cool stuff. And we've always wondered where the high budget of Wandavision, where was it really coming from? Because as I mentioned before, we were spending so much time within a sitcom environments. This is where the budget clearly came from in this episode here. So many spectacular shots, comic book-esque. It's that typical MCU fashion. What they do, they create this almost comic page panel aesthetic in terms of the heroes. Lots of flying shots here, lots of typical superhero landings and posing, and I love all this. I love this aspect of the comic book superhero genre, and this was great, and it was all fantastic to watch on the screen here. All the visual effects looked amazing, and particularly the conflict primarily centered, of course, between Agatha and Wanda, and we were getting many sequences of them using their magical powers against each other. I did point out that one particular quote from Agatha where she established that Wanda was now even more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme that we all, of course, know is Doctor Strange. So that was very interesting now, and I think overall what this episode really did establish, that Wanda is probably now the most powerful and the most influential character in terms of just her sheer abilities within the MCU. So it'll be interesting to see where they take that going forward, if indeed Wanda does appear as we all expect her to do within Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. We get another scene where we see the Peters, Pietro, seemingly keeping Monica Rambeau trapped within the house. And I have to admit, I wasn't really invested at this point. I know, again, a lot of fans were disappointed that the Quicksilver version that Evan Peters played from the Fox's X-Men didn't really to turn out to be much. And yeah, you kind of thinking, well, why did they do that? Was it really necessary? You know, you could have at least got the original actor, I think his name is Aaron Paul Johnson or Aaron Taylor Johnson, to come back and play. Maybe they couldn't get him back, so that's why they got Evan Peters back. So yeah, I think that was a bit of a failing by Marvel. You know, they must have surely known that getting Evan Peters back would have triggered a lot of people and got them supremely hyped as to what the purpose and the meaning of his emergence within the show would have meant, but it just amounted to nothing. But I wasn't really too bothered by either Evan Peters' picture or, to be honest, Monica Rambeau at this stage. So we carry on with the main conflict, and then we see obviously Agatha trying to manipulate the people, and the townspeople now surround Wanda and they're asking her to set them free. And this is a very intense scene again. We see it where Wanda tries to silence them, I think, by controlling their necks, and they're all bent down and they're suffering. But they're really pleading for her to let them go. And then Wanda comes to her senses, and then we get an extremely spectacular visual shot again where she's using her powers to break free of the Hex Zone. And then we see these shots where the Hex Zone is breaking free, and then we see all of the people running away from it. But also, of course, General Hayward spots the opening and he sends the military back into the Hex Zone on here. And again, we get some cool, more visual shots and spectacular shots of the Vision versus the White Vision. This is all great to watch. And then we get a very good scene, I felt, between the two characters on here. As we all know, ever since he appeared in Age of Ultron, Vision is much more of a noble, far more philosophical character. So I love the lines of dialogue that we got between the two. And I think the overall significance here is that the White Vision was obviously the real Vision that had died from Infinity War and him being put back again, and the other Vision was, of course, the, if you like, the spiritual remnants of what Wanda had deemed him to be. So I think in many ways what they did here, they had Vision tap into the White Vision and maybe transfer himself into that white version. So in essence, the White Vision is now the real Vision. I know it's a bit confusing perhaps, but I think that's where they're going. And of course, he zooms away high in the sky. So maybe this is their way of trying to keep Vision within the MCU, because now we know that there is an actual embodiment of Vision out there somewhere. So I think that's their way of trying to keep Vision within the universe, because obviously they know the strong connection between him and Wanda and they want to retain that for further adventures. So I can understand what they're doing on here. So we carry on again, and Wanda comes up behind Agatha, and many people did know that this was the tactic that she used, if you remember, in Age of Ultron, when she was coming up behind the various Avengers and she was taking on their previous memories. This is one of the best scenes I thought of Age of Ultron. I think they should have expanded on it a bit more. And it takes Agatha back to her memories of, if you remember from the previous episode, when she was being captured by the various other witches by the tree because they were scared of her using the chaos magic. So this was Wanda's way, I guess, of trying to disarm Agatha. But Agatha turns the tables and they start to trap Wanda. So it's a bit of back and forth. Sometimes Agatha's got the upper hand, sometimes Wanda's got the other hand. So we get again a lot of battles, and I love now what we were seeing here when we see, for the first time, we see the helmet of Scarlet Witch costume, and it comes in the energy form on Elizabeth Olsen's face. That was very cool to see. And once again now we are very much shifting into the big budget Marvel blockbuster zone here within this episode. Really like what we've become more accustomed to. So that was great on here. So there's more fighting in the sky, all of them fighting together, flying in the clouds, exhibiting all their forces against one another. And again, we get another cool visual shot where we see the two symbols within the sky. Now, at first I didn't know what these were, but going back on it again, these were the same two symbols that were shown in the cave, and essentially it shows that whoever controls the symbols at the time is the more dominant person in terms of using the magic. So Wanda now had been able to gain control and became the more dominant magic user, and that's how she was able to defeat Agatha. And we get another very spectacular visual where she seemingly absorbs the magic from Agatha, and we get a cool visual shot of her in this pose here. We see all the magic transmitting back into her, and then we get that amazing shot where we see the silhouette of her within the Scarlet Witch costume. And again, this matched the silhouette that we saw from the previous episode, where it was all masked in yellow when she came across the Mind Stone when she was incarcerated within the Hydra base. So that was trying to reference that sequence. So again, it looked fantastic. She absorbs all the magic for her, and then we finally get, as we all expected, especially from the previous episode, we all knew that at some capacity that Elizabeth Olsen was going to wear a more updated version of the classic Scarlet Witch costume. We'd already seen it in the more cosplay fashion, as I referred to in the previous episodes, but now this was the full-on updated modern nice version of the costume. And I have to say, Elizabeth Olsen, she looked fantastic on here. It had this much more of a darker crimson tone to it. It wasn't quite as bright as what the original version was, but it was much more sleek. She looked very athletic. You know, it was this kind of crimson outfit, and we had this dark black, if you like, skin tight trousers. It's a bit reminiscent of the Hela costume, if you remember, from Thor Ragnarok, worn by Kate Blanchett. But Elizabeth Olsen, she just looked fantastic. She looked amazing, and I love it when Marvel does this, when it tries to stay as close as they can to the original costumes from the comics, with a bit modern tweaks here or there, you know, just to have it that more of a contemporary feel. And she looked great. She looked fantastic on here, and she's using the powers now. She's in full control mode, and she essentially now disarms the Hex Zone. And one thing that was a bit weird here, she decides to keep Agatha trapped in this zone. I didn't really understand where that was going, because as we saw later on in this episode, the Hex Zone has kind of disappeared. So I don't really know where Agatha is staying, where she's going to be part of the townspeople. And then Wanda refers to the fact that if she ever needs you, she'll come back to you later on. So I'm guessing this won't be the last we've seen of Agatha Harkness, and I'm pretty sure when we come to the multiverse of madness with Doctor Strange, there'll be some critical event where they'll need to go back and acquire the help of Agatha. So I think that's where it's leading to. I don't know why they did that. I think at this point I would have preferred a much more definitive defeat of Agatha, if you like, but that's where they're going. And Catherine Kahn has been really good in this role, so praise to her if she does manage to make more appearances within the MCU. So once the final conflict has been decided, everybody's escaped the Hex Zone, the whole town is back to normal, and we get a really emotional scene now, because Wanda and Vision realise now that the Hex Zone is disintegrating. So everything that's been created inside it, in terms of Vision and also Wanda and her sons, is going to come to an end. So we get a great scene where we see both of them putting their sons to bed. You know, Wanda says, "Thank you for choosing me as your mother." And then we get a final emotional farewell between both Vision and Wanda, and it's very emotional. It's so acted, and again, it just emphasises how brilliantly the chemistry has been between both Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany within these roles. It's fantastic, it's amazing, and really retains that heart and soul of these characters that the MCU has exhibited very well for the most part. You know, the whole point of the MCU is that we care about these characters. We go for all the various emotional dilemmas that they exhibit throughout these films and television shows, and they did this again here, and I thought it was a fantastic scene. And then we see the Hex Zone close, and then Vision obviously disintegrates. But as I mentioned before, this isn't the last time we'll see Vision, because of course the White Vision version is out there somewhere, so I'm pretty sure he'll return in some capacity. So once the Hex Zone disintegrates, we see Wanda coming back to the same location where everything all started in terms of the Hex Zone being created. She walks along the townspeople now, and they're all giving her deep pensive stares. So one thing is that Monica Rambeau said they don't remember what he did to her, but they clearly did, because why else would they be looking at her like that? So they clearly do remember what Wanda did, and we could argue, yeah, that Wanda did violate all of the people by keeping them within that certain zone and taking control of them. So yeah, there is a kind of comeuppance, if you like, that could have been put onto Wanda in that case, but that doesn't happen. And Wanda, now she's in the full costume, she flies away. We see her flying away from the town. Again, really cool visual shots. And then that's when we come to the end of Wandavision. So we've come through that particular arc now, establishing Wanda, her origins of her powers, and what they mean to her going forward. We of course had the earlier line from Agatha saying that you don't know what you've unleashed, and we see them opening the book as well that we're looking at. So there will be ramifications for this. I don't think it's a complete open and shut case. And of course, we will be leading into the multiverse of madness as well. So there's much more to come from Wanda. So overall, I think this was a really great finale. I don't think that we will see a season 2. Maybe people will be hinting at it, but I think this is a one and done. And we really only have left now to talk about the 2 end credit scenes. Now, one of them was when one of the people from Swords, they take Monica Rambeau to this theatre and then they turn into a Skrull. So as we all know this from the Captain Marvel films, and particularly the end credit scene from Spider-Man Far From Home, the Skrulls now are fully working in tandem with Swords now, I guess, and the Skrull member says, I know somebody who used to be a friend of your mother's and he wants to see you. And so when Monica asks who, she points up to the sky, it seems. That is indicating clearly that she's going to speak to Nick Fury. And of course, if you go from the end credits of Far From Home, you know that he was based in the space station of S.W.O.R.D. above on it. So that's what that means. And to be honest, it wasn't nothing too significant for me. I'm not really invested in Monica Rambeau character. I know she's going to be appearing further in both Captain Marvel 2 and the Miss Marvel television show as well. But she's not a bad performance. I'm not invested in her as a character. So this end credits was a bit underwhelming, if I'm to be honest. And then of course we get the second end credits, where we see Wanda now is on the house within the mountainside. She walks inside, and then we see what I've read is now an astral plane version of the character, and it's a much more darker, more scary looking version of Wanda. And she sees that she's reading the book that I think that Agatha was reading, and then we hear the chants of her 2 sons within the hex in there, and we see her eyes lighting up. So to be honest, when I first saw the scene, I'm not quite sure what they're making of this, whether there's an evil remnant of Scarlet Witch that has been released following the recent battle between Agatha and Wanda. I think that's where they're going. So again, we may see more of that within the multiverse of madness, but I didn't really get it too much. Why her sons are screaming, because the hex zone has been destroyed now, right? So I don't know why they're doing that. Maybe the hex zone has been retained in some mental capacity within Wanda. I'm not sure. So I didn't really get the full context of this particular scene. It was a good visual, but in terms of what it means going forward from the MCU, I wasn't really too convinced by what it meant overall. So again, what I think overall for this finale, as I mentioned before, very spectacular, very action-packed, full of visuals, full of great comic book shots and battles. I think overall, for me, it's been a satisfying payoff for a show which I've always been very critical of, particularly in the first half of it. I think, again, they indulged too much in the sitcom realities. I've seen a lot of reviews stating that they felt that a lot of the supporting characters were kind of pushed to the sidelines, and yeah, that's true. And I think that's a result of the fact that, again, we spent too much time in the beginning really just withering around with the sitcom realities, where we could have dealt with the sitcom characters a lot sooner, and then maybe that would have given the story even more of a completed finish. But I think in terms of the main bulk of the storyline concerning Wanda, concerning Vision, concerning Agatha, the chaos magic, and of course now we have Scarlet Witch in their full form, so it covered all of those major bases. So I think this has been a satisfactory arc for the Wanda character, and it will be interesting to see how she hooks up forward with Doctor Strange. I think it would have been good if we had an end credit scene where we see her going up to the Sacramentum building alongside Doctor Strange, or some hint of Doctor Strange. Maybe she wants to meet Doctor Strange, or even if Wong or someone else comes to her and says, right, we need to meet with the Sorcerer Supreme, somebody's going to help you with this magic. I think that would have been a far better tease going forward for this episode in general. So I know one more aspect to say is that a lot of people are disappointed that there wasn't much in terms of big reveals or big cameos. Now, it has been kind of confirmed that Elizabeth Olsen didn't exactly say that there was going to be a Luke Skywalker moment, but Marvel didn't refute those claims either. So I think there was a bit of mischievousness by Marvel to let everybody get overhyped with the fact that we were going to get a massive game-changing cameo within the show, and it didn't really happen. So I'm seeing a lot of reactions of people that were quite disappointed by this, but I think I can understand that sentiment. But I think you have to judge the content for what it actually is, not what you speculate it to be. I think that's the overall contention when we look at the reactions within WandaVision. I'll probably talk about that in a separate video, but I think for now, overall, spectacular finale, sound, solid conclusion, amazing performances from all actors, particularly with Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany and Catherine Kahn. Elizabeth Olsen, she looks fantastic in this new modernised version of the character, and it'll be interesting to see where we take her story next going forward. So those are my thoughts and feelings on the finale of WandaVision. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What were the high points and low points within this finale? Were you disappointed that this show maybe didn't deliver in terms of the theories that you had going forward? Do you think we should have had more substantial and revealing cameos throughout this episode to get us really excited for the next chapter within the MCU? Are you looking forward now to the Falcon and Winter Soldier, which comes out, I believe, in 2 weeks' time? So that will, of course, be far more different in its tone, far more action orientated. So we'll see how the reaction goes forward for the Falcon and Winter Soldier as well. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And as for Falcon and Winter Soldier, I will also provide premiere reviews and episode standouts and episode finales as well. So those are my thoughts on the series finale of WandaVision. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please hit those like and subscribe and notification buttons to help me grow more content for you in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.